So hello you wonderful citizen of the internet, and welcome to another eating disorder related video. And I apologise for the fact that I'm completely losing my voice. I've just been recording the longest video in the world, and then I finished and I checked my inbox and I realised I have multiple messages literally just in the last few days from people asking about their sister, their cousin, their best friend, all of these people having recently been diagnosed with an ED or recently developed an ED, and they're like, what do I do? Like, how do I behave around this person? Like, how can I help this person? And I wanted to make a video and try and be a bit helpful, because it's just not something I can condense into a message soundbite in any way. And honestly, the tough thing is that I'm realizing more and more as I age how little I actually know. That I think when I first got on this channel, however many fucking years ago, I really was of the opinion, like, I've been through an ED, therefore I can speak with authority on this subject, and I can talk about other anorexics, and I can know what they're going through, and I can know exactly what they're doing, what they're thinking. And no, you can't. No, it would not be such a difficult to cure disease if it was that simple. If one person could go through it and then they were an authority on the whole fucking thing, and you could relate to anyone with an ED, it would not be that difficult. So I would say, honestly, if you've been through an ED, as I have, you can probably speak to like a fraction of people with EDs, and you will know exactly, yeah, I get this. But a lot of people, it's going to be a completely different situation for them. So it is difficult to give advice. And unfortunately, I think there's going to be a lot of people in the next few years probably, who are going to start developing EDs, and you're going to be in this situation, whether it's you with the ED or whether it's someone you love with the ED. This is going to be a situation that a lot of people are in because of the fact that skinny body types seem to be coming back with the whole, Ozempic jabs and everything, and the Kardashians losing weight and seeming to lead the flock of people suddenly getting worryingly skinny. And it could be worse, honestly, than the 90s and the early 2000s, because now social media, like, you can't get away from the triggers and the comparing yourself and all of this. So yeah, I wanted to make this video. So I would say, you need to try and work out what kind of ED demon you personally are facing with this person, because it is going to vary so much. So you need to try and get them to open up to you in some way. And obviously this is going to be different depending on your situation. If you're this person's best friend, hopefully getting them to open up and talk to you a bit is not going to be too difficult. But, if you're a sibling or a cousin or something, that's a lot tougher, because sometimes you can have a great relationship with a sibling, but you never talk about anything deep. And one thing I would say, though, when it comes to trying to get them to open up to you, if you've never dealt with an ED yourself, try not to do the thing that most neurodiverse people do, and I do this too, we all do it, which is to try and relate to them. Someone will say, oh, I'm going through this thing, and we will say, I went through a thing that was similar a few years back, and these are what I learned, and this is how I can relate. And I know neurotypicals hate us doing that, because they feel like we're trying to snatch away the conversation, we're trying to one-up them. We're not. We're literally just saying, I am qualified to hopefully help you with this because I've been through something similar. So reining in that instinct is going to be tough if you're neurodiverse. But if you've never been through an ED, I just don't think there's an experience, unless they're talking about the mental aspect of it. If they're talking about the depression, the anxiety, all of that, and you've been through that, then sure, throw in your experiences. But if they're specifically talking about the food stuff, and because a few times I've had people do this with me where they've tried to relate via bad dieting experiences, and it's like, no, you can't compare having a crappy time on the cabbage soup diet to an ED. It's just you feel, as an ED'd person, when someone makes that comparison, you feel very minimized. I guess it feels like they don't grasp the enormity of what you're going through. And when it comes to making a kind of open, non-judgmental space where hopefully they can talk to you, a lot of this, and actually maintaining your relationship with this person at all when they're ED'd, is going to depend hugely on you, the way you are around their food. Because obviously, you know, a lot of people think, you know, ED'd people basically don't eat and, you know, they just survive on basically nothing. When for most people with EDs, they actually become very, very, very fixated on the small amount of foods they do eat. You know, they're very fixated on their safe foods. If they can't have their safe food somewhere, they won't go at all. And if, you know, if they can't eat on their normal schedule, they won't go at all. So if you're not creating the right environment around food with this person, they may slip out of your life completely and you may never have the opportunity to help them in any way, or they may just shut themselves away from you more and more and more. So when it comes to food, I think the first thing you have to do is not comment in any way, be it negatively, be it positively. Like just don't comment on their food. They're going to eat a lot of weird shit. They're going to eat a lot of weird, revolting shit. We do, I'm afraid. You know, obviously you don't want to say something like, oh, that looks disgusting. Would you not rather have a pizza or something? Maybe, you know, maybe if you're very comfortable with this person and they've been ED'd a long time and all of that, you know, the occasional bit of ribbing like that is not going to be harmful. But for someone who's newer into it, it doesn't help. Don't say it. Equally, though, saying something like, oh, that looks really nice, that for some people that's going to be fine. For other people, though, that's going to make them feel, is this food too fatty? Like if this food looks nice to a normal person, is it in some way too normal, too fatty? Because most of the food I eat, like normal people, are gross about it, and and they're saying this looks nice. And definitely don't say something like, are you all right eating all that food? Because I've had that said to me before now when I was trying to recover, and that so did not help. Another time that was said to me when actually it was just a restriction meal, and I immediately flipped out about all the calories that were in it. I was like, this is only bloody 150 calories. It just looks big. Shut up, Blair. So I just don't be commenting on the weird shit they eat. You know, if you want to invite them over or invite them into your room or whatever, you know, do say, you know, bring whatever food you want to eat, and if you want to eat it sitting behind me so I'm not looking at you, then that's fine too. And you know, I know you don't want to be enabling and stuff, but I think you need, like, one of the biggest things with any addiction or ED is going to be isolation. That is always going to make it worse. So the more friends and the more communication and the more social interaction you can keep in this person's life, the better. Because if they ever do in any way try and recover, they're not going to have that gaping space that you have. If you've been ED'd a long time and you've pushed all your friends away and then you try and recover, you push the ED away as well, and there's just nothing. There's just this void that you fall into, and it doesn't help. So you need to keep social interaction in their life, and that does mean being kind of allowant about weird eating. And one of the best friends I had when I was severely ED'd was an autistic guy who I mentioned in my book. I called him Ruben in the book, and Ruben was just so open about food. Like he did not give a shit what I ate in his house, which was great because it meant I always ate at his house. Like, you know, a lot of social stuff I'd go to, I wouldn't be able to eat at all, or, you know, and I'd just be cold and I'd be miserable and I'd have to like go home early, or I just wouldn't go at all. Whereas with Ruben, I could always go round there, and I would eat more because I was able to eat my normal stuff when I was there, and I was able to hang out. And it was just such a breath of fresh air to feel normal around this guy, because even though I was eating, you know, I was toasting marshmallows over a candle, or I was eating, you know, diet noodles with horrible diet cream cheese on it, and it looked like a bowl of vomit. He never said a bad word, and I felt so normal because I was just there eating with a friend, you know, smoking blunts and eating with a friend, and it felt so delightfully normal. And So, if you can get this space with them where they feel comfortable being themselves, because I think although it's very hard to say what the ED is really about for any individual person, control is quite a big overarching theme, like particularly with the restricting anorexics, like less so with the bulimics, but more so with the restricting anorexics. Control is going to be a big part of it, which means you kind of need to allow them control around food in your presence if they're going to remain your friend and if they're going to remain comfortable around you. And if you can create that environment and they can come over and they can be with you and they can hang out, eventually, hopefully, you will have that kind of vibe and that kind of moment that feels right to finally ask them, are you doing okay? I would leave their weight out of it, even if it's strikingly obvious that they've lost an incredible amount of weight. I would not mention that part because their ED is going to be going, yeah, and you don't want that. So I would mention more so the food. Although you've been very allowant about the food and you've said nothing about the food till now, I think one little comment is not going to be that harmful. So if you just say something like, are you really okay at the moment though? Because, you come around and I only ever see you eat these kind of really little meals or salads or something. Like, are you actually doing okay? And, if you've never been through an ED yourself, it's probably worth saying, I've never been through anything like that myself, so I may not know everything about it, but I'm, I am your friend or your sister or whatever. And, I am here to listen. If you ever want to talk about any of it. And then I would leave that hanging, right? The urge, if you're a bit of a people pleaser and you're a bit anxious, the urge then is to kind of go, but if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I would try and hold off on that. Because that gives them such an easy out. And for me, if someone goes, you can talk about it if you want to, but you don't have to. Even if I really want to talk about something, even if I know I need to talk about something, because I know it's going to be a tough conversation, the minute someone gives me an easy out like that, I'm going to go, yeah, I don't feel like talking about it. And then even though I want to talk about it and even though they want to talk about it, I don't know how to broach the subject and it never comes up again and it doesn't get talked about. So don't give them an easy out. I would try and leave it hanging. If you're eating, ask the question and then just, eat something. If you're sitting in front of a TV or you're on your phone or whatever, maybe, you don't want to be like putting them on the spot and just staring at them. You can talk to me if you want, because that feels very judgmental. But so if you're just casually doing things, but you're leaving it hanging out there, so they don't feel under the spotlight, but they are able to sit there and think, do I want to talk about it? Like, do I trust this person? Can I talk about it? And there's that little bit of probing pressure because you've just left it hanging, but you're not putting the full spotlight on them. They might open up about it and they might talk to you, and then you can try to keep asking the open-ended questions. Try not to let them answer with a yes or a no. Try to make sure they're answering in full, because the more you can get them, for two reasons really, the more you can get them to talk about this, the more they're having to think about it. And even if they're someone who's a very deep thinker and who thinks to themselves about their ED all the time, they're very self-aware, when you actually talk about this stuff with an audience, with someone else, it just kind of throws it into a different light, and sometimes you see your own bullshit a lot clearer. So that's one reason to keep them talking. But also, obviously, for yourself, you can't really help, and no one can really help them until you understand what is really going on with them. So the more information you can get out of them, hopefully you can start to relate a bit better. Obviously, the obvious thing is, are they in therapy at the moment? Do they have any help available? I have a horrible feeling that the answer for a lot of people is going to be, well, they're on a waiting list. they've been on a waiting list for a long time, they're getting worse and worse, they're still on a waiting list. If that's the case, please God, be the squeaky wheel. If they won't be the squeaky wheel, you be the squeaky wheel for them. What I mean by that is whoever is putting them on this waiting list and is not giving them treatment and is just leaving them hanging as they get worse and worse, be the thorn in their side. Ring them up, write to them. If there are incidents of terribleness going on with this person, i.e., you can see them losing much more weight, or they tell you what they weigh, or they've cut back their safe foods to almost nothing, or they've had to go to hospital for some reason, or they've passed out, or whatever the incident is, keep a record of all of it and immediately send every single incident off to this person who's got them on a waiting list. Because if you can keep them in the loop, and for starters, be pestering them and be saying, look, I'm not going to let this go quietly. I am willing to take this to whatever complaints body you've got. In the UK, it's usually PALS, the Patient Access Liaison Service, Patient Liaison Service, anyway, PALS, for the NHS. But whatever it is in America, there is usually some governing body that you can complain to if they are not acting right. So threaten them with that if you have to, but also just keep them in the loop so they know, okay, maybe we only assessed them as medium risk, but now they're extremely high risk and we need to shorten the waiting time, we need to bump them up the list. Keep doing that, be the squeaky wheel. And also just have a look around on Google and see, are there any support services available for them in their area, even if it's fairly general stuff, like do they have crisis line numbers? I know the crisis lines are not always good, I know they don't always answer, but it's something. It is something to feel like a bit of a safety net. This is a shit one if you've got ADHD like me, but filtering your speech and trying not to say anything that is going to trigger their ED more. And this obviously relates to food, obviously relates to weight, but can also relate to health, to looks, to sports, things like it can relate to a lot of stuff. And even saying as something as simple and seemingly harmless as, oh, you look beautiful today, and you might be just commenting on their makeup. If you are, make it specific. Literally say, your makeup looks gorgeous today. Because if you say you look gorgeous today, it can be interpreted as, I look healthy today, I look fatter. Because this is what I say with everyone's ED is different. Everyone is going to have a very different kind of ideal or goal in mind with losing weight. Like for some people, yes, they do, they want to look like a K-pop idol. They want to look slim and beautiful, and they want to be getting those kinds of compliments. But for other people, it's not that. For other people, they want to look horrible, essentially. They want to look terrifying. They want to look deathly thin. So I think when it's people who want to look deathly thin, usually it's kind of a cry for help, and it's kind of a way of saying, this, I feel so broken and so fucked up inside. I want it to show on the outside. I can't bear walking through the world and everyone thinking I'm fine when I'm so completely not. I need to be walking through the world looking as busted up on the outside as I feel on the inside. And I would say if that's kind of, if you can get them talking about, what they're, I don't know if they will talk about this with someone who's outside of the ED sphere, but if it turns out that their goal is to look deathly thin, I would wonder whether they are dealing with an undiagnosed neurodivergence of some description, because I think that was a big part of it for me. Because wanting to look like there was something wrong with me had gone back to my childhood. I remember as a quite young child watching a documentary about a little boy with Down syndrome. And it was the weirdest thing, because I remember thinking, God, I wish I had that. Because to me, it was like everyone looks at this boy and they know he's got special needs and they treat him accordingly. And I didn't realize, obviously, because I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was 25 and ADHD till, very recently. I didn't realize that what I meant in that moment of wishing, God, I wish I had Down syndrome. I was just wishing that what was wrong with me was A, known about, B, understood, and C, visible, so people wouldn't constantly burden me with things I couldn't do. That was what I meant by that. And I wonder how much of that also applies to people who want to look deathly thin. Like, is it that kind of thing that they've realized there is something not right with me, and no one is making allowances for it because they don't know it. I haven't got the diagnosis yet. No one's making allowances. People are heaping this impossible pressure on me. I need them to see that I'm broken so they will stop doing this. And if that's kind of how they feel, is it autism? Is it ADHD? Is it BPD? Is it, is there something undiagnosed with them? Maybe. Otherwise, I think it can also be a product of just really horrible trauma, I think, oftentimes, and not always, but oftentimes it's going to be some sort of sexual trauma, I would say, when someone wants to look deathly thin, because they're essentially saying, I want to look ugly. And for many people, that's because looking beautiful or having curves has drawn very unwanted attention to them. And therefore they want to whittle all that shit off them so they never have to deal with that attention and that focus again. And I think also that, the with the potential sexual abuse thing with people who want to look deathly thin, I think your relationship with your body obviously is deeply complex after something like that. And, I'm not necessarily talking about a full-on grape here. I'm talking, I hate that saying, but you can't say the words, can you? I'm not talking about necessarily that it's been that. I'm talking about any kind of sexual trauma is going to, particularly if you're autistic, because things that traumatize us wouldn't necessarily traumatize a neurotypical person. So it may be that what happened to you was something like not that big of a deal on paper, but to you it fucked you up considerably, and you will have the same kind of relationship with your body that oftentimes a grape survivor will have. And so you have this very complex wanting to control it and restamp your property rights on it, because your boundaries and your body, which is supposed to be the one thing in the world that is really yours, has been absolutely trampled and treated as someone else's, sometimes time and time again. And you can want to just restamp your authority and your ownership back on that. But also there is this weird desire to punish the body for what was done to it. I don't know why. I don't know why that's a feeling that goes through your head, but it seems to be. It really does seem to be. I think sometimes you blame yourself or your younger self, depending on when this happened. You blame yourself for not getting out of there, or for not being smarter, or for not fighting stronger, or for not saying the right words, or for not, for somehow not being this magician that got you out of this circumstance. And you blame yourself and you punish yourself, and it's all very illogical. I don't really know how you stop doing that, to be honest. I don't know. God, this is turning into a more upsetting video than I thought it would. But so it's going to be different for everyone, is what I'm saying. And I think probably the people who want to look more like, say, a K-pop idol, who want, they want to be slim, they want to be pretty, they want to be put together, they want to be beautiful. Not to say that then their ED is going to be any less extreme. They are still quite likely to put themselves through some really horrific things, particularly given there is so much information online about K-pop diets and some of the awful shit that K-pop idols are put through to look good. You know, they are put through it to look the way they look. So unfortunately, if, you know, even if that's your goal and you don't want to look deathly thin, you do, you know, in quotations, just want to look like a K-pop idol, it's still quite likely that you're going to do a lot of very, very, very dangerous shit to yourself. But I would say in their case, yes, there's probably still going to be a lot of trauma behind it. I just don't think that anyone really develops a severe or long-running eating disorder based on something as simple and surface level as, I want to look like her. You know, that's a small thought. That is not a big thought that's going to carry you through hell. And carry you through the hellish things you have to do to yourself. It's just not. However, I do warn you, if you're dealing with someone very young or someone whose ED has just started, it's very possible that they will not yet know what trauma is behind their ED. For myself, in my teenage years, I was convinced I turned out fine. I really was. Like, I was like, yeah, my parents are divorced, but I turned out fine. Yeah, I went through all this bullying and some creepy, weird shit, but like, I turned out fine because I had this definite narrative in my head regarding where the ED had come from, that, you know, I got into modeling and I started comparing myself to models instead of other girls. I started starving myself. And I don't know if it was like some kind of self-protective mechanism that I just didn't want to admit. Oh my God, there's a lot of shit wrong with me. And oh my God, these things really upset me, because I've never liked admitting weakness. But eventually you kind of have to realize, look, if all this shit happened to you in your youth, and now you're really hurting yourself, of course it's fucking connected. And that is for them to work on in therapy, really. Because unfortunately, the next realization that sucks is when you do put it together and you do go, oh my God, that is the incident that caused my ED. That is what it's about. You expect it to be this magic bullet that you're just going to be cured, and it doesn't do that. You know, you can put it together and you can go, oh, I know why I do this now, but it doesn't change your behaviors in the present because they're so entrenched at that point. Learning a healthier way to cure that and to live with that and to overcome that is a very long process. But yeah, I just wanted to get this in there because there will be people who are younger or newer to their ED who honestly will swear black and blue that there is no trauma for them, that literally it's just this surface level thing. And I think the one helpful thing that can immediately come from unpicking this and from realizing, dude, you have trauma, is that it will hopefully get rid of the delusion that all it is that I want to be skinny. And therefore, when I am skinny, my life will be perfect. All my problems will be solved. And if you can admit to yourself and realize that you have trauma and that's why you're doing it, at least you will realize, look, getting skinny is not going to take away my trauma. It's not going to fix all my problems. You will be you. You will just be a different number on the scales. That is literally all it's going to do for you. And you will be sicker and you will have more health issues, but you will still be you with all your problems. And I think that is a harsh but necessary realization. So there's still going to be trauma, but I would imagine the trauma for people who want to look beautiful is going to be maybe more like bullying, maybe more like a lot of really harsh bullying for what they look like, maybe a parent that completely undermines them all the time, or a parent that's very fixated on how they look all the time, so that, you know, they feel, because we all have this awful inbuilt desire to please our parents, even if you have parents who are never pleased with you, or you have parents who are outright will slap you down no matter how hard you try, and no matter what you achieve, they will slap that down. Even if you have that, you are still, it's just hardwired into you to want to please them. So if someone has a parent who is very appearance focused and they've always wanted to please this parent and they've never managed it, you know, it that could be something like the trauma that they're dealing with that has pushed them to this place where they feel they have to go to these extremes to try and, you know, there's always going to be some kind of deeper trauma than, oh, I want to look like that. So do prepare yourself for a reasonably heavy conversation, quite possibly, if you can get them talking to you. And obviously, you know, look after yourself through that. If you do end up in a bit of a, I fucking hate the term trauma dumping, I really do. But if you end up in a situation where there is a lot of trauma flying around in the conversation, do make sure that you're okay, that, you know, that hopefully you have someone to unpack with a little bit, a therapist of your own or someone you can talk to. And I think something else to mention is do keep inviting them to things, even if they never come to this thing, even if they haven't been to this thing for years. Keep inviting them, keep opening the door, keep saying, we'd like to see you there, it'd be nice to see you there. Try not to pressure them too much, but keep inviting them to things. And actually, yeah, if you have, this goes for if you have someone in your friendship group or your family who is dealing with any sort of mental illness, I would try and say, like, look, if you ever need any kind of help or things are really, really, really bad, you can call me literally anytime. I will have my phone on noisy for you any time of the day or night. And I will not be angry. I will listen, any time of the day or night. Because, having needed friends who did that myself recently, they are literal lifesavers. And we've had it with friends as well, other friends as well who have, done certain things to themselves and needed people to rush them to hospital in the middle of the night and things. You don't know where something's going to go with someone who's got serious mental health issues. So making sure that there is some kind of 24/7 support network is quite important. Someone did ask about eating in front of ED'd people and like, what do you even do? And I personally, again, it's going to vary. It's going to vary for everyone with an ED. You need to maintain some semblance of normal eating in their household, ideally. If this is someone who's still living with their family or whatever, you need to maintain normal eating in their household, because if they ever want to try and recover, they're going to need someone to be their guide in normal eating, because I know it sounds mad, but you literally forget what normal eating is. You forget what normal people eat, how much you forget that stuff. So it's really good to have a guideline for like, okay, this is my template for normality. And also, you're the non-ED'd person. You need to stay sane. Someone needs to stay sane here. So you can't let it completely affect you. You can't ruin your life completely and alter your life completely for them. So I would say keep on eating normally in front of them, ideally, and always let them know that they're welcome to join you. And whether they want to join you and eat what you're eating, or whether they want to join you and eat whatever weird shit they're eating, sometimes that can be good. Because like one thing, and it was funny because it didn't make me recover in the immediate, but it did give me a lot of food for thought, no pun intended, was when I went to Italy with my family at my lowest weight. It was the first time in I don't know how long that I'd eaten with my family, and all I would eat would be like these green salads. But just to sit at a table with family and, eat a meal with people and just have that warm kind of camaraderie of eating and talking and all of this, that was so nice. And I'd so missed that. And I think, if that had been something that I did all the time, or that I felt able to do all the time, maybe eventually it would have become a bit of like, okay, so maybe I'll try a bit of like what's on your plate. I'll try like a little bit of what's on your plate, and maybe you kind of slightly segue into normality a little bit more bit by bit, but at least you get to feel normal and you get to feel a part of things, and you don't feel so alone and so depressed if you can eat with people. And I'd definitely say, you can have a bit of this if you want it. If you're eating pizza and they're eating salad, do say, you can have a little bit of this if you want. I can cut you off a tiny little piece of it if you want to. And they will probably say no, and then you will drop it. But if you just offer them every time, there may be that time that they don't say no. And if they do accept, please God, don't make a scene out of it. Don't have a whole song and dance. Don't celebrate. Just act like nothing has ever happened. Just hand it over and keep watching the TV, keep ignoring them, let them do their thing. Although again, that that is something that is going to vary. There are going to be some people who do want to be cheerleaded, who do want fireworks, as soon as they eat something, they're going to want that encouragement. But I think for a lot of people, it's just a bit too much pressure. It's just a bit too much focus on it. But it is going to be probably going to be a quite long, bumpy road out of these things, because it is a long running disorder. And for a lot of the people I know who've had EDs, it doesn't really matter when they started. Some people started very young, some people started a bit older, but for most people it was sort of mid-20s. People started recovering, people started pulling ahead, people started recovering. By our late 20s, 30s, most of the people who were going to recover had recovered. And I say this, I think, to try and be fairly encouraging, although it doesn't sound encouraging. If you're dealing with someone who's quite young, there's like a lot of space, really, before things usually get very deadly. It's usually around the late 20s, early 30s and older that things get really deadly with EDs. It's amazing what young bodies can take. Like, it is genuinely amazing the things people can do to themselves, the weights people can drop to. However, I do need to jump in at this point, because this is probably the most important thing, and the thing I meant to say the most in this video, and I forgot entirely, and that is that it is very, very, very important to affirm that they are sick enough. What I mean by this is that it's a very competitive disorder. You will be comparing yourself to other anorexics, and because of the internet and social media, you can, like, however skinny you are and however sick you are, there's always going to be someone who's skinnier and sicker. This can really have huge knock-on effects, because it means you won't seek help. Even if something goes drastically wrong with you, sometimes you won't call an ambulance or whatever, because you feel that you're being a drama queen. Or you just feel undeserving of help. You feel like, it is a disease of self-hatred. And particularly, if it is someone who isn't underweight, they're really going to have the I'm not sick enough in spades. So you need to, at all points, whenever you can, affirm that it is enough, that you are worried about them. You can comfort yourself with the fact that it's unlikely to be fatal for them in youth, but you need to remain worried enough, or certainly worried enough on the surface, to affirm to them that they are sick enough and that they could die. But, and the fact is, you don't know. It's crazy. Having witnessed hundreds of girls, now women in the main, go through EDs, the people who did lose their lives versus the people who are still alive, there are some wild cards out there. Like, there are some people who, we thought would be a goner in their teenage years, and somehow they are still around now. There are people who weren't at a super low weight most of the time, and therefore I think people misjudged them, and people thought, they'll be fine. They weren't fine. They weren't fine. They were gone earlier than a lot of people. And obviously, sorry, this is dark, but there is the super wild card when it comes to EDs that is, self-unaliving, self-deletion. And that is a big cause of death in ED'd people, because it is such a rotten existence, and it is so self-hatred fueled, and feeling that people would be better off without you, that people don't care if you're not there, all of this crap. And that can be a heavy wildcard factor in young people with EDs. That I think the self-deletion rate in young people, I suspect that it's really quite high these days because of social media. Even when they're only 12, 13, 14, they often know someone online who has done it or who has attempted it. And so it's an idea that's in their mind. And because of this, it's especially important to affirm whatever crusade they are on competitively with themselves, to prove that they can control themselves, to prove that they can control their body, to prove that they can be as sick as whoever they're competing with in their mind is. affirm that it's enough, that they have done enough, that they don't need to do any more, they don't need to take it any further, and that you're really worried about losing them if they do take it any further. And it's obviously, it is a tough balance beam to walk when it comes to not being smothering and not being panicky and not making them feel guilty spending time with you because they know they make you feel worried and bad and all of that. So you don't want to really smother them with this stuff, but you do need to make it known, I think, that it's not going unnoticed. I mean, again, it varies and everyone's different. There are the anorexics who are very, very in denial and they don't like any discussion of their disorder. They don't want to even admit they have a disorder. But I think for most people, the awareness is there. Flinging your concern at them from afar is not necessarily going to be helpful. But when you're someone who's in this person's real life and you're, their sibling or their friend or their cousin or whatever, your opinion is going to hold weight. On, more than one occasion now, it has been enough to push me towards recovery, knowing that I'm worrying the people I love and that, I'm being a burden on them. Please, please, please never seem blasé about it. Never brush it off with you'll be fine. Affirming that they're sick enough is very, very important. And with all of that said, back to the video. And yes, they probably will have lifelong health issues resulting from this, but they should make it. And and sometimes, unfortunately, sometimes you do need to sink to those depths in order to go, fuck this is awful, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't fully buy the whole rock bottom thing that everyone has to hit rock bottom before they get out of things. But I will say, if you have hit rock bottom in any kind of disorder or addiction, your recovery is a lot more solid than someone who dabbled and got a little bit rocky, but that's the sort of thing that you recover from and you can always fall back in, because it never got really dark. If someone does get to a really awful place, the upshot of that is that their recovery, if they manage it, will probably be more solid for having those terrible memories. Returning to the things you shouldn't say, if you've got a friend who is the sort to kind of sort of push it a little bit and kind of ask you, oh, do I look fat in this? Do these look okay on me? Do I look like I've lost weight? Anything like that. If you're comfortable saying this, and if it is known that they have an ED, I would just say to them, look, we both know you've got an ED, and I don't want to be any part in making it worse. So I'm not going to comment on your body. I'm not going to comment on your weight. I'm not going to comment on any of that stuff, because I don't think it's good for either one of us. Even if they're not diagnosed with an ED, I think you can say something similar, because I think you can say, I feel like you stress about this stuff a lot, and I feel like I can never say the right thing, and I don't want to feed into you stressing out or hurting yourself or whatever. So I'm Switzerland. I'm not saying anything. It is a minefield, for sure. I would, I would stick a lot of questions into Google, things not to say to ED people, stick that into Google. Ways to help ED people, stick that into Google, because there's going to be things that have not occurred to me. A book that I kind of hesitate to recommend, but is a very good book, is Marja Hornbacker's Wasted. I say I hesitate to recommend it because I think it's the most triggering fucking book ever written. I really do. I would say, if you've got anyone ED'd in your life and you're going to read that book, keep that book under lock and fucking key. Do not let an ED'd person anywhere near that book, I don't think, because I swear to God, it doesn't matter how sick you are, you will feel like you're not sick enough and it will trigger you. And ED'd people only seem to return to that book when they're trying to trigger themselves. But if you're not ED'd, I do think there's a lot of very astute observations in that book. And a final thing to say really is that, you can't be responsible for everything with this person. You can't live their life for them. You cannot save them, you cannot force feed them. And when it is a disorder that is very much about control, even things like having someone forced inpatient can be detrimental. Obviously it's going to help them in the short term because they are going to be force fed, and physically they're going to improve. But it's what happens when they come out, and it's what happens with what they do with that trauma of having gained all the weight so quickly, having had all their control, their hard fought control ripped away from them. It's a very, very messy chess game, EDs, and how to treat them and what to do with someone. But yeah, I will repeat that the vast, vast, vast majority of people I knew who were very sick with EDs in their teens are recovered now, with families, with all the normal stuff going on. So for most people, it's not a lifelong thing, but it's going to feel like a long thing. It is going to feel like a long thing while you're in it. And that sucks. If you're like the sister or the cousin or whatever of this person, try not to let, your own youth be completely sucked away on this, because, it's tragic enough that they're going to lose their youth to all of this crap, let alone that it should do that for you too. So you do have to set some boundaries, although, as I say, I think making sure they know there is someone there all the way around the clock. If you've got multiple friends or multiple family members who can be involved in this, and you can set a bit of a schedule, and there's someone they can always talk to on certain days, because on one hand you wouldn't forgive yourself if something happened to them on the one night you had your phone switched off, but on the other hand, you need to live a fucking life. You do. You need to have some boundaries somewhere. So, do reach out to other family members or other friends or whatever, and spread it around a little bit, the responsibility for this person, if possible. And anyway, this is long as all hell right now, so I guess I'm going to shut up, but hopefully some of that was maybe a bit useful. I hope. So, yeah, I wish you all the best, and good luck. Okay, over and out. Bye-bye.